In this video, we are going to create quotes on scroll. To create this, we are going to use the scroll type of event listener, and we will be creating infinite scroll. How it is going to work is we are going to use quotes from codes.js file that is present in this folder as a data source, and then we'll display 3 quotes, and as soon as you're scrolling, we are adding more quotes at the bottom. We also have to use DOMContentLoaded to display an alert message saying that the content of the DOM is loaded. So here I have already created the HTML of this page, and you can see that we have quotes along with the author name. So in the starting, we just need to display 3 quotes, and as soon as you're scrolling, it will keep adding new quotes from this page that is codes.js. It contains multiple number of quotes. So when you take a look at our index.html file, here we have a UL element. Inside that we have multiple li for each quotes. At the bottom we have added codes.js file and index.js file. So let us start working on our index.js. So here we have selected our root element, that is UL, and the first thing we need to do is to display 3 quotes. So for that I'm just going to create a variable called max, and it will have a value of 3. And what we need to do, we need to loop over 3 times and create li and put it here. So for that I'm going to create a function called addQuotes. And here what we need to do is to loop through for 3 times and then add 3 different quotes. So we'll use for loop. We'll say I is equal to 0, I is going to be less than max, and I plus plus. Now here what do we need to do? For each quote we need to create a li element. As we can see it here, we also need Blockquote and Cite. So let's go ahead and create 3 elements. So we'll say li is coming from create element li. Similarly we'll do other 2, that is Blockquote and Cite. Now what we need to do is to add this Blockquote and Cite inside li. So we'll say li.append Blockquote and Cite, and at last we need to append that into root. So we'll say root.append. We need to append the li element, but we haven't added any kind of text in Blockquote and Cite. So let's go ahead and do that. So for doing that, we are going to use the value of index. So let us have a variable called index that will default to 0. Why we are creating this variable? Because we have a variable called quotes that is an array of object. We need to get access to specific quote to display the name there. And here what we are going to do, we are going to say Blockquote.innerText is going to be, we need access to the quotes, so that we'll get it by quotes because we have imported that here in HTML, and that has a variable called quotes. So we got access to quotes array. From that we just need to access index. So we'll get an access to an object that will have property of quote text and quote author. So from here we'll just access quote text. Similarly, we'll also need to change the site, but instead of quote text it will be quote author. So now we should be done. The only thing we need to take care of is like the value of index is not changing from 0, right? So what we need to do is we need to change the value of index every time we are adding a quote to root element. So we'll say index plus plus. And what we need to do now, let us go ahead and call this function. We'll refresh it and we don't see any change, but as soon as you come to the bottom, you'll see that we have added 3 different quotes. Why it is happening is because we have a static HTML element here that we need to delete. So we can see that the number of element displaying here is only 3. If you change the value from 3 to 5 and you refresh it, you'll see it will display 5 quotes. But as in the instruction it is given, it should be 3. So now we are done with displaying quotes. What is the next thing? The next thing we need to take care of is like whenever you're scrolling down, you need to keep adding new quotes one after another. That is what we want. So for that purpose, we are going to use this diagram to understand when we are going to add new quotes. There must be a condition, right? And that condition will decide when you're going to add new codes to the page. So right now there are 3 codes. As soon as you scroll down, nothing is getting added. But we need to understand is as soon as you scroll down, how will you understand that the user is scrolling down, right? That is the most important part for this application. So let's just take a look at this diagram to figure that out. So here we have a thing known as scroll height. What is scroll height? So the scroll height is the height of the page, including when you scroll it. So it starts from here, keep going down, and it ends at the bottom. So that is scroll height. So scroll height is the height of the document or the page. Then we have something known as scrollTop and clientHeight. So here whenever you scroll up, so this part is not visible after some second, right? So that is what scrollTop means. And whatever is visible on the page at a given point of time is clientHeight. So we are going to use the combination of these three: scrollTop, clientHeight, and scrollHeight. What we will do is, whenever you add scrollTop and clientHeight and they are equal or greater than scrollHeight, we need to fetch data. Don't worry if you're getting confused. As soon as you look into the code, you'll understand that. So first thing we will do is to add an event listener of type scroll on document. And here we are going to get access to 3 properties, that is scrollTop, scrollHeight, and clientHeight. And that we will get from documentElement. So here when you go on to the page, you can see that you have document. Here you have documentElement. On that you can access some properties like scrollTop, that you can see it here. Similarly we have access to scrollHeight and clientHeight, right? We are able to see that. So this is what all these properties are. When you scroll up again and look for the first property, the scrollTop, you can see it changes from 75 to 171. So that is what we need to see. So here we need to get access to all these 3 properties. So we'll say let scrollTop is coming from documentElement.scrollTop. Similarly, we need to get access to scrollHeight and clientHeight. Now what we need to do, we need to append some more codes to it. And how we are doing it? By calling this function addQuote. But we need to call this function in a specific condition, and that condition can be whenever you add scrollTop plus clientHeight, it should be greater than or equal to the scrollHeight. And if that is the case, then you have to go ahead and call this function addQuote. That is what we want. Let's see if it is working or not. So we'll refresh it. In the starting, you can see you have only 3 codes. If you go down, can you see that the new codes are getting added as soon as you go down? Can you see that? Isn't it cool? Like in the starting, they're only going to have 3 codes, as you can see it here. But as soon as this condition becomes true, you're going to add 3 more codes. And that is what is known as infinite scroll. There is one problem that can happen. Is as soon as you keep going down, there will be a time that the number of codes will be over, and in your console you will start seeing an error message. So I'll keep scrolling to check that error message. Can you see that? Because the number of codes is exceeded, and here it is throwing an error saying cannot read property code text of undefined, because the value of index is greater than the length of codes. So let's look at that. So we'll say codes.length, that is 612. But look at the value of index, that is exactly 612. And that is the reason that it is throwing an error. So what we are going to do here is, along with checking this, we'll also check if the length is greater or not. So here we'll say index should be less than codes.length, right? Only in that case you have to fetch it. Now when you refresh it, and even if you go to the bottom, you will see that it will not throw error because it is not going to fetch any data. It will just end. So I'll keep scrolling down, and we'll see what is going to happen. Can you see what is happening here? Even though we are at the last code, it is not throwing any error. Why? Because the function addQuotes is not being called. Only when it matches the condition, it will be called, otherwise it will not. So in this way, we have completed this exercise. Let's take a look at what we are doing here. So we have root element here. We have two variables, max and index. Why I created a variable called max is because in future, if your product engineer is coming back to you and saying instead of showing 3 codes, you need to display 5 codes, you have to just change one variable and it will start working. Can you see it here? It's displaying 5 codes at a time. So that is why we created a variable max, and we have a variable called index that starts from 0 and keeps going up every time you're adding a new code. So here we have a function called addQuotes that is going to loop over 5 times and create li Blockquote Cite, add some text and append it into our root element. So first we are calling it whenever the page is initialized, and the last thing that we are doing is listening for a scroll kind of event, and we are getting access to scrollTop, scrollHeight and clientHeight. And after getting access to all these three, we are just putting a condition saying whenever the scrollTop plus clientHeight is greater than scrollHeight and index is less than codes.length, you have to keep adding new codes. So in this way we completed this exercise. There's only one thing that is left, is to use the life cycle, that is DOMContentLoaded, to display an alert message saying the content of the DOM is loaded. So the way you should be doing that is just adding an event listener on window. So we'll say window.addEventListener. We are listening of type DOMContentLoaded, and we just need to alert a message saying the content of the DOM is loaded. Now when you refresh it, first you'll see an alert message because the content is loaded, then it will display 5 codes. But this is not the best place to use DOMContentLoaded. Generally you do that is whenever you want all the HTML should be loaded, only after that you want to call any specific function. So that is a better way to do that. And how we should be doing it is whenever DOM content is loaded, alert a message, and after that call this function addQuotes. So when you refresh it, it will display the message and then it will call the function. It will not call the function in the start. So here it doesn't make any difference, but in other situation, when you want to only call specific JavaScript function when the HTML content is loaded, that is when you're going to use DOMContentLoaded. So in this way, we completed this exercise.